Go live. Okay, everyone. I think we are live. If somebody who's watching wants to throw it in the chat that you can see and hear us okay, that would be lovely. This is our
No.
first ever
Yeah.
live event. There should be about a 15-second delay. It says live and it's counting down 21 seconds.
Yeah, not yet. So I have both on my screen. I don't see anything new here.
Okay.
Waiting for Project Piaba, March 27, 8 p.m. My time. Okay, now it's starting.
Okay. So it's a 43-second delay for you. Anyone else? Anyone else in the chat? Can you see us? Jeff Kane? Keith?
I'm not sure I can hear you in the YouTube stream.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Shady Grady.
They say yes, they can hear us. Great. Awesome.
Great.
This is our first ever live event, so bear with us. None of us are technologically, well, Fernando is, but none of us are technologically geniuses here. So we're trying something new and different, and we figured we would kind of put something together to talk about the trip, because it's been, at this point, we've been back, it's now almost the end of March, and so we were there the end of January through, we came back February 8th, and the boat portion of the trip ran through the very beginning of February, and we stayed a couple of extra days to check out some stuff in Manaus and go visit some exporters and stuff. So we figured we'd do like a rundown of what the trip is all about, and the things that we did and saw, and we've got some photos and videos to share from the trip. And I'm going to apologize ahead of time here because I have a cold, so I'm not feeling great. If I sound all nasally, I promise that's not how I normally sound. So sorry about that.
Healthy, so
that's great. I'm glad to hear it's still daylight where you are too. So it's a little bit later here on the East Coast. It's already starting to get dark, so I'm hoping that my fish tank will look a little bit better when it gets dark outside, less glare. Fernando's moderating the chat for us, so everyone behave. Fernando's watching you. So just to introduce everybody, I'm Jackie. I'm the director of outreach for Project Piaba. So we're all volunteers. Nobody here, is making a living doing this. We all have day jobs. So I volunteer doing the outreach coordination. I go to fish clubs, I go to conventions, and I talk to people about Project Piaba. Fernando is a longtime participant in Project Piaba. He does a lot of stuff with the YouTube channel, does a lot of the social media stuff, and most importantly, he's one of my buddies. And when we're in Brazil, we do a lot of stuff, a lot of content creation for the outlets and stuff. So again, I said none of us are tech geniuses. I can barely operate my phone, but one thing that we noticed during the pandemic is that a lot of people were really excited to see the work that Project Piaba is doing and to see the wild habitat where the fish that we enjoy in our home aquariums actually originate from. So that's really exciting, and we've always been very happy to share that with you because that's really something that our work didn't really encompass until the pandemic, when people started paying attention to more things online and we started trying to do stuff like that. And then Kapil is our marketing specialist. And so he's been doing some work to sort of spread the word, because for a very long time, Project Piaba has been like a very academic organization where, if you know about us, you know about us. And if you don't, you never heard of us. So we've been doing a lot of work to sort of spread the word. And I think of it as kind of like a fish missionary type thing. Like, have you heard the word about sustainable fisheries? We're here to tell you about it. So it's a somewhat counterintuitive project. A lot of times, people have been conditioned to think, and especially people in my generation of fish keepers and environmentalists, we've been conditioned to think that anything coming from the wild is bad for the environment. That's something that I grew up with. You think about fisheries, you think about destruction. But in this case, this is a fishery that has a sort of counterintuitive environmental component that the people who are participating in the fishery itself are well aware of how delicate the fish are, and therefore how delicate the fishery is that's supporting their livelihood. And that creates a lot of really important environmental stewards in the region where the fish are coming from. And that's a place like this where we work in the middle of Brazil is a place where there's not a whole lot of ways of making a living that aren't at odds with the environment. So there's, you think about the Amazon and all the things that we've heard about it, most of them are negative, like slash and burn farming, timber harvest, gold mining, all of these things that are negatively impactful on the environment. But the aquarium fish, so in the 1950s, this industry really kind of started out of nowhere. Herbert Axelrod and a bunch of other ichthyologists who were kind of in a race to describe fish species came across cardinal tetras. And they're a gorgeous fish. They don't get very big. And that's one of the hallmarks of Rio Negro fish. It's such a nutrient poor system in general. Most of its carbon inputs come from the forest, not from the river. So a lot of other, like if you think of other major rivers like the Hudson River or the Mississippi River or the Nile, those are rivers that have a lot of carbon inputs from the river itself. And so you end up with a lot of big fish, right? Like striped bass and perch and things like that. In the Rio Negro, there are a lot of species that are big, but most of them, like 90%, are small. And also, because it's such dark water, those fish are also very colorful, which is the perfect storm for aquarium fish. We love small, colorful fish. And a lot of those species have been in the aquarium trade since the 1950s. And that's very important because those fish were collected by hand for decades. Generations of fishermen collecting them by hand, and for decades those fish had there was no competition in the market. So when we think about marketing and when we think about where you buy your fish from, in many cases, like if you think about fisheries like food fish, you can buy farm-raised fish, you can buy wild-caught fish, you can buy there's all different stocks for, say, cod. You can buy North Atlantic cod, you can buy Pacific cod, you can buy, they come from different places. And for decades, the Rio Negro fish only came from the Rio Negro. Now they're produced in aquaculture facilities throughout the world. And now all of a sudden, this fishery that never had any competition for it since the 1950s, all of a sudden has competition. So Project Piaba started in the early 1990s to sort of monitor fishing activity, fisheries, fish populations, things like that. And then sort of morphed into because at first it was horrifying when you thought about how many individual fish were coming out of the region. When you think about that many fish being removed from the environment, it's scary. And then you see how these fish are actually driving conservation, and it takes on kind of a different meaning, right? Because those fish, people are catching those fish, but they understand that the rivers are going to flood the next year and reinvigorate the fishery. All those fish spawn once the rivers flood up into the trees. And then when the water levels drop, you can go in and catch them again, but not if you destroy the environment that they need to survive. So not only are people protecting the habitat, but they're preventing the incursion of any of those other industries from the area. So that's basically what Project Piaba does. Now about the trip that we were just on, this is a really fun, incredible experience that I've not heard of anybody having a bad time on the expedition. Nobody's ever like, oh, I went to the Amazon and I had a terrible time. Well, actually, I'm sure people have said that. Teddy Roosevelt said that. But nobody has said I went to the Amazon with Project Piaba and I had a terrible time. So basically what we do on the trip is we go and we visit the areas where the fish come from. We visit the villages, we visit the exporters, we visit the habitat, we experience the environment, and we get to see all of these different parts of the fishery from source to sink. And that's a really great opportunity for somebody who's been a lifelong aquarist to see where the fish that are in your care originated from. And that's one of my favorite things. Oh, Bruce is here. Hi, Bruce. Oh, hi, Andre. Cool. So there are a lot of Project Piaba alumni here. If you had a bad time, don't tell me now. But basically, it's a chance to experience the place and the people and the culture and the fish from a point of view that you really can't get in any other way. And the thing that makes it really important too is that it is also how we get our specialists and our scientists and our work funded. So people pay to come on the trip, they participate in the trip, they get to see this awesome stuff, they get to do this awesome stuff, and that is what's helping us get down there and fund the work that we do. So the team is actually much more than who you see sitting here. We have a team in Brazil, and this is a really cool thing. This is the report of the best handling practices training that Joe and Alini had done in Barcelos and Santa Isabel last year, where they actually have trained some people in like the best ways to handle fish. So basically the way that the fish are captured has not changed since the 1950s, but our understanding of fish biology and fish handling and aquaristic techniques has changed a lot since then. So what Project Piaba is doing has been applying some of those more biologically sensitive means of handling fish. So for example, not taking them out of the water, but scooping them gently in a bowl and keeping them in the water so that they don't damage their slime coat flopping around in the net. That's a really important thing that you wouldn't know about if you hadn't like looked at a fish under a microscope once its slime coat's been compromised. So these are all really important things, and the culmination of that work is the best handling practices training and on the fishermen being able to put those techniques to use. So it's more than just coming on a trip and having a vacation. It's what helps fund our work and do the stuff that we do. So that's really great. Now, what I thought we would do is just share some stories and photos and stuff from the trip, just to kind of get people excited and talking about it and asking questions. So let's see. Does anybody want to share their favorite part of the trip?
Well, I will say one thing that I thought was really cool and interesting is one of the local aquarium shops that I like to go to. I actually got to see the communities in which their exact cardinals come from, meet the people that actually fish the cardinal tetras that are in my aquarium, and see the process in which they move through each link of the chain. And I think that was the really coolest and I think most eye-opening thing for me.
That's really cool. Yeah, we're actually. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Fernando.
Yeah, I will go a little bit into what Kapil said, and I was thinking about this when Jackie was talking about the people in the forest, right? And having gone to the Amazon several times now, including with my wife, one of the things that we most enjoyed was staying as tourists in the communities. In the Tapajós River, for instance, we've been a few times there, and understanding that they have a really different way of life. And not to romanticize it, because it's certainly difficult, but it's a way of life that it's much less dependent on money. So people who live in a community by the river in the Amazon jungle, they usually live with their family. So the father is 2 houses down, the uncle is 1 house up. They have their brothers and their cousins and long friends. So the sense of community is very strong. So if anybody needs help, there is help available. Nobody is alone. That's one thing. So let's say somebody gets married, and so they are going to move out of their parents' house. They do have the space to build a new house, right? They will cut down a few trees, but depending on how that's done, especially in protected areas, that's pretty sustainable, right? And cutting down trees provides lumber for the houses, so they will build their own houses. If they need food, they get protein from the river, from fishing, right? They do hunt too. It's not really, the hunting is pretty restricted here in Brazil, but in traditional communities it might happen, and there are some special rules. I'm not really familiar about that, so that's also a source. But fishing is really the most important source of protein. If they need starch, they have their manioc plantations maybe a few hundred meters from their house, and they make manioc flour. So they decide what they're going to do day by day. They don't have a boss. They don't have office hours, right? So it is a different kind of living. As I said, it's not all positive, but it was very interesting for us to watch that and understand that you might go into a house like the ones that we are seeing in Daraqua in the videos that Jackie is showing, right? And they are very simple. They have very little things inside of them, and people actually spend very little time inside of them, right? But people don't need much, and because their lifestyle is different. Of course, this is changing a lot with now we have internet in Daraqua. We have about 2 3 years. I observed that satellite internet started being available in different communities and villages I visited, and now with Elon Musk's internet, Starlink, right? That's 10 times better, or even 20 times better, and very affordable, and that changes the life of people everywhere. And one thing that is very important for me with helping Project Piaba and helping the Piabeiros is that once they cannot live, once they stop being able to live as they are used to, they have to go to the city. And in the city, everything is paid for. The place that you live, the food that you get, the furniture that you need, right? And this means that many of these people end up in slums and in a type of poverty that they don't know about, and it's pretty demeaning. And so keeping people in the forest might be a bit counterintuitive, because we think that people in the forest always have an impact, and it's true, right? Every time we go on the expedition, we do have an impact on the environment around us. But they are the guardians of the forest. They know what's happening. They watch what's going on, and they truly love the place that they live in, and they will try to protect it. So that's
So
a
what
long,
I'd like to add
long
to
story here.
that, if you don't mind me interjecting quickly, but the way some of the Brazilian laws work is that these communities, they have the rights to the resources within the community. So a third party can't legally come into the community. And so this is a really important thing. So long as these communities are there, these forests are protected. And I often hear things that, these people that live in these communities, these forests, they'll do anything for money. And like Fernando said, it's not true. And they actually care very deeply about the forest because it is their home. If they don't take care of it, they don't have a home, and they don't have a means of making income. So
Yeah, if you think about it, like here we have something called a neighborhood watch, where people are basically just like paying attention to what's going on in their neighborhoods and not letting bad stuff happen. Like if you see your neighbor's house getting robbed, obviously you're going to do something about it. So the people who are living out in the forest are really keeping watch of the forest in a way that the government can't watch a place that expansive. So it's really important in terms of actual conservation work. And so I'm actually just showing some videos here. This is Manaus. This is in the port. And Manaus is very much a big, kind of scary city. It's like New York City in the Amazon. And so like Fernando had mentioned, there are families that have been living in small remote villages for generations, that once they have to move into cities, think about it, you've got to go buy food, you've got to go buy firewood, you've got to go buy, your transportation and everything like that. And it's a completely different way of life. Real quick, let me show the fish market here, just because that is exciting to people who've never seen anything like this. I can smell this video. But it's a very busy place, where so many species of fish are there for consumption. And if you think about this is one type of resource use. But the aquarium fish fishing, those fish naturally rebound their populations year after year, because if you think about the water levels rising and falling, I have a cool video from the first place that we went to. Open my folder up here. Pay no attention to my hat.
Is that a pigeon?
Yes, that's my pigeon.
Are you sure you're not living in a slum?
I might be.
You have a roof on your house, right?
They're more comfortable or they're more colorful in Manaus. So this is a big tree at the first place that we went to. This is a Suma Uma tree, and this, you can see the water line on that tree about 20 feet up, and this tree was at the top of a big hill too. So the habitats where these fish are coming from are seasonally inundated. There's a rainy season, and then there's a slightly less rainy season. And during the rainy season, the water level expands so much. Like it's actually almost inconceivable to anyone who doesn't live in this area. And it rises by like 40 feet. And so that water level goes up into the trees in the forest, and those fish respond by spawning like crazy. There's all kinds of extra food. There's all kinds of extra space. They spawn. And then when the water levels drop, those fish get sort of consolidated into little pools, and that's when they're gently captured for the aquarium fish trade. So I will say that this year in Fernando, what'd you think about the water level this year as compared to last year?
Well, we did have the opportunity to understand how crossing a a forest stream with canoes on our shoulders feels like.
Oh, hold
right?
on.
So
a community building experience right there, or team building experience.
Yeah, that was some team building. So yeah, water levels were really low, and usually fishermen and divers, they like low water levels because in theory you will have more concentration of fish there. But what we saw this year was a mix of that, because not only did we have low water levels last year, but we also had record high water levels prior to the low water level season. Yeah. And so it seems that the whole system was kind of out of whack, right?
Big time out of whack.
So in Daraqua, I think that was very clear. I have been there 4 times now. And last time was unfortunately the time where we saw fewer species and even fewer, I think fewer in quantity too, specimens. It was still very interesting because then we saw other stuff that we usually don't see, like lots of rays and wolffish, right?
Yeah.
But it was really different this year round.
Forgot to mute it. There's a lot of loud boat sounds. Yeah, the place where we had to carry the canoes over all the log jams and stuff, that was on the Rio Branco, which is the largest tributary of the Rio Negro, and it was completely unnavigable. We got the big boat maybe 100 meters up the Rio Branco, and then had to stop and go the rest of the way by the canoes. And we were all really excited to go see. There's this really cool place up one of the tributaries of the Rio Branco called Macquarie Creek. And yeah, these are all from the 2024 expedition, Bruce. And the creek itself, the last few times that we've been there, is a pretty navigable creek with the canoes. And there's a lake at the top. And then beyond the lake, there's another creek that sort of feeds the lake that we saw all kinds of really cool stuff. Angelfish being among my favorites. Angelfish and these new undescribed species of Moncausea that were almost like bright yellow, just beautiful, beautiful fish. So we were really excited to see those. And we went up there this year, and it took 12 hours to get the canoes up to the lake. And this was cool. We did see Oscars there. But they were like, in just as much water as an Oscar needs to swim. So like we didn't get any videos.
And murky.
But they were bright red Oscars. They were just
so
phenomenal, beautiful fish.
beautiful fish. But
And waters, which
yeah.
we haven't seen. I haven't seen before either.
yeah, it was really exciting to see that. But we didn't see the angelfish. And Fernando and I tried to go up the creek to where we had seen them in the past. And we ended up in like up to our necks in mud. And Fernando was like, Jackie, do you want to film a video for YouTube? And I was like, no.
It would have been funny.
The water there.
I was like, I feel like I'm just like one wet t-shirt away from being in a WWF video. Like I'm just covered in mud. Like it was horrible.
I think on the way over there, I think the canoe spent more time riding us than we spent riding them.
Yeah. Here's Kapil actually making his way out.
You're pretty nimble there, my friend.
I found this today and was like, oh my gosh.
Stop getting away from me.
You're not even moving.
That's called the family jewel pose.
So this was great. We ended up, I think at one point Kapil decided that it would be easier to walk up through the forest to get there. But then we were like, well, how do we get them now? We were like, get in the water. But it wasn't like nice water to be in either. It was like sharp sticks and like, all kinds of.
It was weird because part of it was just, leaf litter and muck. And
Yeah.
you would step in it and these gas bubbles that smelled worse than farts would come out. And then other parts of it was just nice sand. And then I made the great decision because thinking that it was going to be kind of sandy or whatever. I didn't wear shoes on this trip, on this one. So that was a big mistake that kind of slowed me down. Bring shoes everywhere you go.
Yes, bring shoes.
Oh, and by the way, this was a learning experience for the whole team. We are not going to do this anymore, right? That was a one-time thing. That was a bad decision. It was. Now we say it's fun. It was certainly a very interesting experience, but it's not what the trip is about. Nobody here is trying to be Rambo in the jungle, right? We are really trying to have a good time and watching fish and being safe and getting back on to the big boat on time. But this was the reality this time around. We really had few spots to visit because of the water levels. So there was one place we wanted to take a look at called Zamula, I believe. And the local people there say, hey, don't even bother. You're not going to get far into the creek, right? So that's why we tried so hard to get to Agua Boa, because we had big hopes of having another good fish diving day. And we did get another type of experience instead.
Yeah. So in 2016, Agua Boa was like this other place where it was so difficult to get up the creek, and it was kind of difficult to know. But yeah, it's not usually difficult. It was just kind of fun to share that experience with everybody. Most of what we do, this is not roughing it.
I would say I've been on many expeditions in the Amazon, and this was probably the most comfy and luxurious expedition. The rooms do have air conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
At least at night they have air conditioning. And there's a full kitchen staff there. There's a full boat crew there. That I would have to say that in the Amazonian region, that was the best food I've ever had was on this boat. The cook and the sous chef are really talented. There's the Rainbow Restaurant, which is kind of like where we hang out, indoor little seating restaurant kind of area, really nice. And then the top deck is open, and so you can get on the top deck and it's just like Nat Geo Live, like I like to say it, where you can just watch the wildlife and the birds. Oh, there's a bird right there.
Yeah, I watch it all the time.
So it was pretty awesome. And you can see the top deck. It's kind of where that green is. I had hung a hammock up there, and I would just go hang out. We had a little fish photo station. We even set up a biotoped aquarium on deck, which was kind of cool. We had Dr. Flavio Lima on the trip with us, who's a world-renowned ichthyologist that studies characins and tetras, and so he set up his little lab over there. And it was a phenomenal trip. So it was a phenomenal boat too.
That was actually, so having Flavio on was actually my favorite part of the trip, because we were able to do a lot more fish identification work than we've ever done in the past, because there's a lot of fish there that look so similar to other species, that are like, really hard to identify, that's really hard to know what you're looking at any given time. And having Flavio there and having Mickey there taking the photos. So these are all photo tank photos. These fish are all 100% alive at the time of the photo, and they were just beautiful to be able to take like scientifically identifiable photos of these fish. So there's this was a little Amblydoris catfish. I have a video that Daraqua was like catfish town this year, of being most likely relative to the low water level. These catfish were buried in the sand everywhere. It was actually somewhat hazardous to walk with your feet on the ground. So like, even though there was like only about this much water in some of the spots, you didn't dare like put your feet down, because if there wasn't one of these catfish in there, there was one of those catfish very nearby, and a lot of stuff like that. But they were really cool to see and take photos of and stuff. So these are just some of those pictures. I've been working on taking some of these photos. Mickey gave me permission to use his photos to make stuff. So this was actually my favorite. There's a fish that I've never really thought about before, but this is Geophagus winemilleri. Beautiful fish. I made like a little postcard with them and like some information on the back. So I'll have those at some of the fish conventions and stuff, just for people to look at and stuff. Eventually we'll make a calendar or something too, and that'll be really exciting. But it was just really cool to be able to identify these fish. Cephalus verrucosus. Look at that fish.
Looks like a piece of the leaf litter.
Yeah, very well camouflaged.
I just pasted the link to iNaturalist to the group of pictures that Mickey Tobler published there.
Mm-hmm.
So you can all take a look, very detailed look at all those fish that we found there.
Yeah.
So the past trips we tried taking pictures of fish there. So I bought special cheap lights because that's what I had available. I had some small tanks made, and we tried, and it was frustrating, and we didn't get far with getting pictures of the fish that we found there. But with Mickey Tobler, this was fantastic. So
I will tell you, with Mickey Tobler, I learned the proper way of taking a photo of a fish. I thought I knew what I was doing, and I clearly didn't. And so it was really nice. That was a great learning experience, I think, for all of us.
Yeah, I thought I knew how to take photos, and I learned that I didn't. Yeah, it was really great.
So I think one aspect of this expedition, which might be obvious, but I want to really stress, is that we are all fish people there, right? We do have some people who go for the Amazon experience, which is, hey, this is the cheapest way that you can spend 2 weeks on the Amazon with an excellent guide, which is Junior, the boat's captain, in an excellent boat, right? Like Kapil said, the boat is fantastically appointed. The food is great, and the staff is the nicest staff you could find in Manaus, right? And you are almost paying cost for it, right? Project Piaba really doesn't make any money on that. I actually believe that there's a lot of personal money going to each of these expeditions to make them work. So if you have other people in your life that are not fish people, but do like nature and would like to get to know the Amazon, that's a fantastic expedition to go to, because we don't only do fish things. Yeah, the nice thing about this is we do a lot of fish things, but we also go watch birds. Sometimes a junior is able to catch some bats for to show us, and tarantulas, and walk in the forest and visit communities and get to know the festival in Barcelos, and a jungle town in Brazil. And so it's a really, really rich experience. You have people who like the plants and the orchids and the carnivorous plants, and you have people who like the birds, and you have people who like the frogs, right? And you have people who like everything, like Jackie.
I mean, the great thing about Junior is, I had various requests for Junior, and he pretty much made almost all of them happen. I really wanted to see macaws in the wild, and he's like, "There's some over there," and he pulls the boat to the side, and we got really close to a couple flocks of blue and gold macaws, which was really awesome. He knows a lot of the different things. We saw a mata turtle, which I think the story of the mata turtle is a little, there's a little disagreement that we have between what actually happened, but
I know what happened. I was there. I know what happened, Kapil.
We saw a mata turtle is this large turtle found in the Amazon, and it literally looks like a pile of leaves was made into a turtle. They can get big, and this was probably the biggest one I've ever seen. I would say it was over 30 inches shell, or at least 30 inches shell diameter. And we were looking for emerald tree boas, and we came across. So on one of the canoes was Fernando, Jackie, and I, and this mata came up, and
I'll do you a favor and silence the sound on the video.
There it
You
is.
should not. The truth wants to get out.
Basically, they wanted me to catch the turtle because I literally came like face to face with it. We got so close, but I'm a fish person. I'm not a turtle person, and that thing kind of scared me to catch it.
There he is. He was just looking at you. You could have kissed him. You could have.
Her. He goes like her.
Yeah, that was cool. It's hard to the video doesn't really do it justice, but the mata was about the size of a manhole cover. It was a very large turtle, and it was very special to see. I've never seen one before in the wild. They're very they're not uncommon, but they're fairly cryptic, and so it was really special to see. And we wanted Kapil to catch it so we could bring it back to the boat and show the people who were not in our canoe. But he didn't want to grab it.
I like my fingers, okay?
The video is me like screaming at him like, "It's not a snapping turtle, just pick it up." Anyway, but the bird watching is fabulous too. Anybody who likes any birds at all, or even if you've ever seen a bird before in your life, this was Junior was calling it the purple pigeon. It's actually a purple gallinule. This was my favorite bird of the trip. That was really cool to see. It's a bright purple bird.
The water bird, it has really long legs, so it can walk in the water. It was a cool thing. I really like kingfishers a lot, and we saw 3 species of kingfishers. There's like a small size one, a medium, and a big one. That was really cool to see.
Fishers everywhere. Here's where Junior like just kind of drove the boat right into the riverbank to look at the macaws for you. This was cool. I'll play this with sound. The macaws screaming is fun. They're quiet right now, but right before sunset, the birds get all excited and start looking for the roost, so they're flying around and screaming at each other and doing stuff.
Yeah.
But you can really see just how vast this river is. And in this video too, you can really sort of see how the aspect of the river changes as it floods. So here, where you can sort of see like the river bank, this is just an island in the middle of the river, right? And that bank, that sand bank, all of those trees are underwater in the high water. And right now, the river water is the river itself here is pretty low, but not as low as it gets. We were sort of in the middle of it. It had already come up a little bit at this point, and it's kind of weird because it's not like the tide, like where I'm from. People are familiar with the tide kind of going up and down. It's not like that at all. It's more seasonal, but also the Amazon River itself pushes up the Rio Negro. So further down the river, closer to the Amazon, the water level is more affected by the water from the Amazon pushing up, and further up the river, it's more affected by rainfall. So you end up with these weird water levels that it could be rising in one place and falling in another place. Like when we were in Daraqua, the water level was actually the water. There were places where the forest was sort of flooded, where there were these pools that the water level had gone up and had come back down and was then rising again. So it was kind of it's kind of confusing to think about from a what the fish are doing standpoint.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these, so in a lot of these rivers in the Amazon region, they have what they call a flood pulse. So the basically it's that time in which the water is high or the water is low, and then the water is within a continuum of that high and lowness. And these are triggers for the fish to spawn. When it is high, these forests, we talk about the fish going in them and spawning, but that's an adaptation these fish have to survive. Is when there's more water, there's less chance of predators getting your young, and so it spreads everything out. Also, it acts kind of as a natural management tool because you can't easily catch the fish when it's that high. So whether it's a natural predator or humans, which I'll argue is a natural predator, it's difficult. And so it's a really important. So if there's no forest, then there's no place for these to hide. So that's why the fishermen know that these forests are really important if they want fish, whether it is to collect for the aquarium trade, to eat, or to sell for seafood.
Yeah, all of those things. Yeah, actually, if you want, I can show some of the fishing technology. This is really cool. I actually got all this stuff out of my spare room. Let me just make that small. Stop my screen there. Did I stop my screen?
I think you did. Yeah. No, you did not. Yes, now you did.
I'll just put it backstage. So here we have some of the fishing technology. This is one of the fish traps called the kakuri. Fernando, did I pronounce it correctly? Oh, look, kakuri.
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 I can spell it.
Better. You can, I know. It's true.
But so here's basically it's a trap, and there's a stick that goes along with it that holds it up. So you put it in the water so that the top's out of the water and the bottom is underwater. So it's in shallow water, and it's kind of open here. So you put some kind of bait inside it. The fish swim in, and then they get trapped passively, and then the people come back and collect the traps, and that's how that works. There's also what Fernando was just holding up, the habuche. I got the small one out. I have a full-size one in my closet. Okay, I've got the quarter size. Fernando's got the half size. Full size is about as tall as me. You could catch a Jackie in it. And I didn't get it out because it'll scare the crap out of the birds because they're afraid of big nets. But basically, it's a hand net, and it's used to sort of scoop the fish out of the shallow areas, either from the canoe or from standing in the water, mostly from a canoe. And especially if you have like a canoe paddle, you can sort of herd the fish in and scoop them up and catch a whole lot of fish all at once out of the school. And then we have this special basket made out of philodendron fiber that gets lined with a large plastic bag. And this is used to contain the fish in the canoes while they're out collecting fish. So they scoop them, they put them in here, and then bring them back to the village or to wherever they're based out of. Some of the fishing communities are actually just based out of boats that are, it's sort of like a camp where people will go. That was that spot that Fernando went to last year, right? Aduya?
Aduya, yes.
Yeah. So it's a way of life that's really foreign to Americans, but it's people who are living in the river, on the river, and on boats kind of traversing the river opportunistically, looking for the places where they're going to fish or the places where they're going to, camp or live for the rest of the season. So it's a really interesting way of life that is sort of incomprehensible to, especially to Americans, but is really environmentally linked and environmentally dependent.
Yeah, and these people are, so like the cities like Manaus and Barcelos, they're far away from the major urban areas like where Fernando lives. And so resources take a while and are more expensive to get there, but then these communities are far away from those cities as well. So like getting like a tub to put your fish in is expensive if you can get one, and it's not as available. So they've improvised and made these really cool things with the resources that they have, and it functions quite well.
And one thing that is critical is that this way of life is dying out, right? The piabeiros, the fishermen, the fisher people, they do earn very little money. So there is a very big imbalance in negotiation power between the exporters and the people catching the fish, unfortunately. And because of that, even though the piabeiros who are, we talked to quite a few piabeiros, they are all more or less maybe between 40 and 55 years old, I would say, right? Or even a little bit older. They do really like their profession. They are proud of it, right? But they don't want this for their children. And their children don't want this for themselves. A few stay, sometimes because they don't have other choices. But they know what's going on in the world. They are connected to the internet. They know what they are very big on Instagram, on TikTok, YouTube.
Love TikTok.
They know that they have a lot of opportunities outside of the Amazon. And the parents, they say, hey, it's better for you to get a job somewhere else, maybe work in one of the sports fishing operations in the area, right? They do pay a lot better, but they are an interesting alternative, but not the best one, but certainly not the worst, because the worst would be maybe logging or illegal gold mining, right? But so you do have a big generation gap that if things don't change for the better in the next few years, we might really see that way of life disappear, right? And all of that knowledge disappear.
And
because
with
if
that way of life disappearing, we're going to start seeing habitats and species also go away because you don't have the guardians that are protecting it. So that's one reason that we really are promoting this fishery and really working on it and studying it, because it is a really important part of the Amazon, the culture, and a great conservation tool.
And at the moment, we have a big challenge in Brazil. There has been there are two factors, maybe three factors, right? We have had a change in government in the beginning of 2023, right? We do have a government that is much more at least much more environmentally minded, which is a very good thing. We have had a change in the people in the environmental agency, and the environmental agency is actually fighting the government for better conditions because it has been dismantled in the previous government for 4 years. So now that the environmental agency staff has been promised better conditions, they are asking for those. And one of the ways that they are pressuring the government to increase their salaries and their working conditions is to be very literal, following the rules and the procedures that they have, right? Brazil is a big country with many, many rules, and with many rules that don't make sense in certain situations. And there is some advantage in having some leeway in how the governmental bodies interpret and apply those regulations. So one little thing that they started asking for that they didn't ask before, and we don't know exactly why, right, is that every fish export consignment has to have a official invoice from the moment that the piabeiro catches the fish until it gets out of the country, right? And before that, and this is something that is in the rules, so this is correct, right? If you have a piabeiro transporting fish to a commercial spot where they will sell it forward, they have to have an invoice as the legal document that allows them to transport that fish. And prior to 2024, what happened was that the invoice was made when the fish got at the export by the exporters, right? And it was a very good solution because then you continue to have the important information about who fished the fish and what fish those are and how many. But who did that was the exporter, who knew how to do that and was in a better situation to do that, had the infrastructure to do that. And now in 2024, maybe because there was a change in the environmental agency team supervising this, maybe because it is part of that strategy of pressuring the federal government for better working conditions, or maybe because we have now people at the environmental agency that are maybe ideologically against aquarium keeping, right? We don't, and probably a mix of those three factors. Exports have been paralyzed in Manaus since February, and I think they might be starting again now, but in a very limited way, in the sense that if somebody wants to export fish, they will ask IBAMA, this agency, for a authorization, and they will take 30 to 45 days to give this authorization, right? Because that's the legal time that they have to do it. They usually do it much quicker, but because they have that time and because they are negotiating with the federal government and maybe because they want to make things difficult, it's taking that long. And now piabeiros have to go to Barcelos, to go to another governmental agency where they get help to create those invoices. And so it makes everybody's life is more difficult now. And this isn't helping getting environment protected, unfortunately. It's just making the hard lives of piabeiro even harder and making maybe the less hard life of exporters a lot harder too. So we, Project Piaba has people in Manaus who are connected with the state government, who have done a lot of work trying to get things done. For instance, making it possible for Piabeiro to have support for the invoice creation in Barcelos and not only in Manaus. But this isn't enough. We are looking for other ways to help. I will have an important meeting with people high up in Brasilia on Monday, and they are not people directly involved with the agency, but they are people involved with environmental things, and they know, for instance, the Minister of Environment, who is a very good person, but who might not know that collecting fish in the wild might be or is actually has a positive impact and not only a negative impact. And we want to make sure that they at least know about this, right? And that if they take decisions against that trade, that it is not lacking that vital information.
Yes, exactly. And I will say it's harder than it sounds for the Piaberos. Like, when you think about adding an extra level of government bureaucracy, if you make that government bureaucracy be an online form, it's impossible where they live and work.
Jackie, the simple fact that it is in written form, right? And you have to write down the scientific names of the fish that you have caught.
Yep.
Right. And many of the Piabeiros, they only read very poorly, right? The young people they know how to write and read, and they are all over WhatsApp and messaging apps, and they know how to use a cell phone, and sometimes they have access to computers. But people who are 35, 40, 55 years old, they will use WhatsApp only sending audio messages. So they record their voice and they listen to WhatsApp as audio messages. Yeah. They don't write.
The fish
and then
names.
Yes, and then you ask them to get into a governmental website for creating invoices. Yep. And you all know how it is to use governmental websites all over the world. It's not easier in Brazil, even though Brazil has a good record in that, right? So it's really if people really expect people in the Rio Negro to create invoices before they reach a city like Barcelos or Manaus from their boats, even though we do have Starlink in some places. And I am talking about Rio Negro, but this works for other places in Brazil, in the Pantanal, in the Xingu River, or even here in the coastal area of São Paulo, right? And you think that it's reasonable to expect that kind of people to do that kind of task, you are completely disconnected with reality in the country.
Especially when they've never had to do it before, when it's just an out of the blue, like, it was optional before 2024. And it's, as the way that the rules are written, it's something that they can require, but they have not required it in the past. And the lists of the fish on the online forum are not, they never adapted it after going from the whitelist to the blacklist. So the species are not there to select. So you have to know the Latin names of the fish, and they all have very regional names, like Piaba brava, and not that species in Latin. So it's basically impossible for people to navigate the way that they've been doing things.
So this is the biggest challenge at the moment, right? But the challenge that Jackie mentioned in the beginning of this video is also a big challenge. And this is why the Project Piaba motto is buy a fish, save a tree, right? All of you are worried about environmental, and all aquarists all over the world get a connection to the environment through their fish. And many of you and many of those will generally ask themselves what's the best way to get aquarium fish with little impact to the environment. And the obvious answer, or not the obvious, but the answer that pops out very clearly is farm-raised fish, right? Because you don't have anybody in the forest creating any type of impact with farm-raised fish. And once you have that, you break the connection with the place where this fish come from. So you have a problem of gene pool. You have a problem of fish farms. They do have an environmental impact, right? You have a problem of possibly exotic species invading local areas in Asia and yeah. So we do see videos on YouTube of pencilfish in Vietnam, right? What are they doing there? They fled some crazy fish farm there, and the same thing happens here in Brazil. And so the simple fact that this fishery is getting a lot of competition from fish outside of Brazil, and that well-meaning people refuse to buy wild-caught fish because they really believe that's the best choice, has been having a very big impact in the industry for the past decade or more, right? And so we have this spot effect now with the environmental agency, which we hope to overcome. But we do have the longer term effect of both people with good intentions trying to preferring farm-raised fish instead of wild-caught, but also simply the competition with farm-raised fish from elsewhere, because the biggest cost of this fish is transportation, right? You pay by the kilogram, and you have to put water in the bags, and water is heavy. So you put 50 pencilfish in a bag with 2 liters of water. It's 2 kilograms that you are hauling from Manaus to Miami, or not Miami at the moment, but from Manaus to São Paulo, from São Paulo to Miami, from Miami to maybe San Francisco to Hong Kong, right? That's a lot of jet fuel and a lot of cost added to that, which if you have farm fish raised in Vietnam to get to Hong Kong, that's much cheaper. So the only way that we can make sure that these people continue to be the guardians of the forest is if more people around the world understand that buying wild-caught fish from the Rio Negro, which has the support of the Project Piaba to understand how to collect those fish in a sustainable way. Yeah, that's the way to go forward.
Can you, Jackie? Can you go back to Scotts Creek? So yeah, this was actually a really oh, there's Scott, named after the man, the myth, the legend, Scott Dowd, who's our
The
director.
director.
So this area is called Atura, I believe, right, Jackie?
Aturia.
Aturia, yeah. So the water was very like tannin stained and very red over here. It was just absolutely just I would say it was a surreal sort of environment. It was different. And so these right here are Hemigrammus stictus, which is a fish that you rarely see in the hobby. One that's in really high numbers, and one that could be another great candidate for the aquarium trade that could be a really good sustainable option. But this is you can't see it in this picture, but they have this bright red tail. They're a little bit higher bodied of a tetra. But yeah, this place, you can see how just red the water is. It's a really red tannin stained water. That was a finger.
Yeah.
And it's just it was just a surreal environment to just see this. You know, the sand is white. There's areas where there's a lot of leaf litter, and then on the banks there's a lot of roots coming down in there that just provides these microhabitats. I don't know if you have a video of it, but there was these really cool shrimp that were like clear and striped in this area as well.
Yeah, I did have a couple videos of the shrimp. I don't know if I didn't load them into the quick draw folder. But yeah, there were shrimp there. There's not a whole lot of invertebrates in this habitat, but there were a couple of shrimp at this spot and a couple of crabs in Daraqua.
It's just an interesting environment because it's not a very calcium-rich environment, and these animals, because they have these exoskeletons, need a very calcium-rich place. So, calcium-rich water.
Yeah, how they don't dissolve, I don't understand. Let me just suggest a new subject to talk. I think Ned is still online. He asks for advice or resources for anyone interested in next year's expedition. So other than bringing shoes, right? So
Definitely bring shoes.
yes. So I think what you can expect is you will have warm weather. We have had pretty good luck with rain, so rain hasn't been too much of a nuisance during this trip. It has been in the past, but things have changed. And during the trips that I was with, wasn't too much of a problem. So you need a surprisingly little clothes during the trip, right? So shorts and t-shirts and sandals for hanging out around the boat, right? Long-sleeved shirts and to protect from the sun, long pants when we go into the jungle, and then some trekking shoes are welcome when we go walking. Or wet shoes are very welcome when you are in the creeks. I do like to use long sleeve shirts and even yoga pants while swimming, especially because I don't want to get sunburned. Hats are very important. Sunglasses. Bring reading material. You will have time to read. Expect to make great friendships during the trip. So we have 2 weeks with the people in the boat, and it's we get to know each other really well. And I have had only very positive experiences with my trip mates so far. What else would you comment, Jackie?
Well, we have a in-depth packing list on the website, projectpiaba.org. It's actually a recently redesigned website. It's beautiful. We're still working on parts of it, but that part is up. So I would just go over the packing list, and you really don't, like Fernando said, you don't need a lot of clothes. There is a washing machine on the boat, but there is not a dryer. So it's all sun powered. So I bring a couple of bathing suits so you're not putting on a wet one. I actually bring a wetsuit because I'm a wuss when it comes to cold water. And I will, like, I don't like to be that cold when I'm in the water. And also Fernando and I would stay in the water literally until the canoes were driving away and we're jumping into them, more than once at more than one site. And
yeah,
if you
water temperatures are very nice, very agreeable, right? But if you stay too long in certain places, it can get cold. So wetsuits are a great way for you to have more comfort and stay longer in the water. And it doesn't have to be anything very heavy, right? So one piece of that I like a lot, it's a vest with a hood, right? And that and shorts are more than enough for me. But I also bring a shorty, right? A wetsuit with short legs and short sleeves. And there's one specific place where I like to use it because I know the water is going to be coming from the rocks and it's going to be colder.
Yeah, I like the long wetsuit. Like I do a thinner. I have a 3 mil wetsuit that I wear because what Fernando was talking about, the place with the rocks. This is Cambewa, and you can see the rocks there are like cheese graters.
Yeah.
And a lot of the cool fish to see are in some of the deeper water in like the deep pools. So I mean, you shred yourself just trying to get underwater, and like you don't even notice it until you get out of the water and you're like, oh, there's blood everywhere. So it is a good idea to have some kind of pants to wear in places like that. the mosquito situation is really not as bad as other parts of the Amazon, mostly because anything with an aquatic larvae doesn't do so great in black water. But they do breed in some of the pools up in the rainforest, or any of the spring-fed places, and definitely in the cities. There's more mosquitoes. Brazil used to require a yellow fever vaccine, and they don't require it anymore. It's not a bad idea. You're never going to regret getting a yellow fever vaccine, but it's not necessary anymore.
Yeah. And now dengue fever vaccine has just been released. That's a good idea to take too, right? I will certainly do this before the trip. I know it's starting to become available in Brazil, right? I'm not sure about the status in the US. You don't need to bring fancy camera equipment for underwater filming. I think most of the videos that you are watching, Jackie took with her new iPhone and a plastic sleeve, right? A watertight plastic sleeve.
Yep. Plastic bag.
And I think the simpler, the better. Right, you can get very close to the fish. There is not much of a landscape. The water is not that deep. So I do have a underwater snorkeling camera, right? So a point and shoot, which is really nice. And just out of extra precaution, I have a case for that. So if the case leaks, the camera is still waterproof, and the case also makes it a little bit more bulky and easier to handle. So that's what I use, and I take way too many pictures and way too many videos that I never use later on. But it's something that I like to do a lot. Right? Yeah. So GoPros are also a good choice.
Underwater case, and I got some amazing footage. So if you are a photography fiend, don't be shy. And the one thing I wanted to add when she was talking about the stuff, there are great shirts that you can buy. You know, this is one of the festival shirts I'm wearing.
They're not very loud. They're very understated. Not very practical.
You don't stand out in a crowd when you wear those?
Not in Barcelos, no. In Barcelos, you don't.
I mean, I get a lot of compliments at this when I go to fish clubs.
Bring a good pair of binoculars. You'll like that. Jackie has great ones.
I got them.
Yeah.
Sometimes thanks, Jackie.
Somebody had asked about there is a visa situation now, but it was postponed. So it's for travelers with an American passport, a Canadian passport, and there's one other, Japan, require a travel visa now for Brazil. But they postponed it. It was supposed to take effect on January 10th. And then they postponed it to April 10th. And then we'll see if it continues, if the requirement continues or if it gets postponed again.
Regarding to pH, temperature, TDS, yes, Jackie is very, very diligent on taking measurements of every site that we are at. And if you watch her videos on YouTube, on Project Piaba channel, she will always list those as subtitles in the videos, TDS is usually 0, right? So very little dissolved solids.
Except for
microsteam. And microsteam is also very low, and pH can range from 3.5 to 6.56, not much higher than that, right? And temperature is 28 degrees Celsius, which is nice. What is that? About 80 degrees Fahrenheit, or a little bit low? Yeah, I think so.
But it's funny, this spot in Cambewa, I had a hard time actually taking the temperature because you were swimming through it's this weird place because it's spring fed. So the water is really cold where it comes out of the creek, cold, like Amazon cold. It's in the 80s, but it feels cold when you're in the hot air. and then it goes into this deeper pool, and then you would swim through like these pockets where like the water was like mixing strangely. And at first I was like, did somebody pee in the water here? It's
Yeah.
a weird warm pocket, but the temperature would raise by like 2 degrees. So like I swam across the creek with the thermometer in my hand, with one hand, just kind of like swimming across the creek. Talk about dedication to water chemistry. I was just like swimming across the creek, and it would go from like 81.9 to like 86 degrees at like just crossing the creek, like you swim through a warm pocket. And I was like, wow, the fish really, like when you think about acclimating your fish, like they obviously they can take it.
Yeah.
Well, one cool thing about Cambuewa was there was a lot of, in the trade, what we call the historic stingray. They've been recently, the population of the Rio Negro a few years ago is described as Potamatrigon walsii, formerly known as Potamatrigon hystrix Rio Negro. And there were tons of those there. That was a bucket list fish for me to see in the wild. And that was really exciting. And then even in this area where it's kind of like rapid, very fast moving water, I saw a really big Matoro type stingray that was probably around 30 inches in diameter. It was just nestled. Yeah. It was really cool to see these stingrays, how they use the 3-dimensional structures like the wood and the rocks, where I traditionally thought they're just going to be in a fully sandy area, but there's just a lot of logs and wood there, and that was really cool to see. Oh, this right here is in Barcelos, an aquarium shop that has that sells pretty much all native fish except for some betta splendids. So,
yeah, that was cool. I wanted to include this because here's Joe doing. She heads up the Brazil team now, and she was working on doing some stuff with Ornapesca, which is the fishermen's cooperative. And so we had a meeting with them. We were going to do a best handling practices training session, but a lot of them were actually out of town for something else. But so we did this, and we had a huge donation from East Coast Divers, which is a dive shop in Boston. They gave us like $1,700 worth of scuba masks, and we made kits for the fishermen, and disseminated these kits to everyone that was there at the meeting. And then went up and down the river in a couple of the communities and gave them to other people who weren't at the meeting, so that they could like snorkel and see. It's useful for pleco collection and jaguar catfish and the other fish that are not collected in the traps and from the canoes. So that was really cool. Here is this a video or I meant to show this much earlier in the talk, but this is just kind of looking down from Barcelos, and like I mentioned, it's a different way of life that's foreign to most cultures, but here, like there's people who live in these boats and they just kind of go up and down, traversing the river and seeking opportunity where it may be. This was cool. See if we can share this. Is this a video?
Ah, yes.
This was at the acai plantation, right?
Yes.
Let's see. I think this is a video, but I don't know why it's not popping up to let me play it.
That was a surprisingly interesting outing that we had. So we had some extra time in Barcelos this time, and usually in Barcelos we are able to take part in the fish festival, which is kind of a carnival that they have there. And the two main characters are the cardinals and the discus fish. And this time around, because of the drought from the year before, the infrastructure for that wasn't ready, so we didn't see the festival. So we had some extra time. And one of the people involved in the work of Project Piaba there, they took us to their family's stead, a few minutes out of Barcelos, and it's what they call a sítio. So it's not really a farm, but it is a rural property, a smaller one, and where they plant things for their subsistence. They will sell a little bit of manioc flour. They might sell a little bit of acai, but they usually have that for themselves. And And so it was a great place for us to see many of the types of vegetables and fruits that they cultivate there and how they prepare the acai wine, like they say, right? The acai juice and the manioc flour. And that was, for instance, this is something that for me as a Brazilian, I only, it's a little bit stupid, but I only understood that almost everybody there in the Amazon has indigenous origins, right? After I have been there, I think twice, right? Because everybody looks Brazilian. And here in Sao Paulo, and nobody talks about their indigenous past, and it's not as obvious as it is in the Amazon. And so that family there, they certainly they are indigenous, but they won't talk about that either. I mean, you have.
It's not a political identity the way it is in other places.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of a shame because I'm very curious to understand more about their culture and the costumes and so on, and even their language, and they identify themselves first as Brazilians, and from some time to now, I would say 10 years now, people have been going after their indigenous roots and starting becoming proud again, right? So that was the way that they prepare the food there and that they cultivate food is a very, very local way of doing that. And so it's again a strange thing. They have so much work to plant the manioc and to make the flour. There's so many steps to transform a manioc root into a ready-to-eat flour. And it's not that expensive to buy it ready in the city, right? And you ask yourself, why do they still do that, right? And it's largely because of culture, and it's largely also because of the if they make it themselves, they don't have to spend money. They have to spend time, but not money, right? So, and even if they didn't do that, you wouldn't have the flour in the cities either. So it's a little bit of a catch-22. So this was a very, very interesting.
Fernando, can you explain a little bit what manioc is? Because a lot of the people in other parts of the world have never heard what manioc is.
Yeah. Okay, I think it's also known as cassava, right?
Cassava.
So it is a plant, a bush that grows. It has a yearly cycle, more or less, and it grows very, very big roots. They can be 3-4 feet long, maybe 2-3 feet in general, right? And about this thick. And they have a brown thin skin, which you cut away, and then they are very wide inside. And you can prepare that in many ways. And there are two specific types of manioc. One we call the mandioca brava, or simply mandioca, which is one, if you eat them the way that they are, you will die because it's poisonous, okay? And there is the other, what we call here in the South, we call mandioca. They call it their macaxeira, which is the manioc that doesn't have those toxins, so it's easier to eat and prepare. But if you want to eat the good flour comes from the manioc with toxins. So there's a lot of work that goes into getting all of those toxins out of the manioc before you can turn it into this flour. And this flour is then their main source of starch in their diet, right? They will eat it with fish, they will eat it with acai, they will eat it with everything.
Yeah, it's very versatile.
Yes, it's a very big part. I don't know about southern Brazil, but in northern Brazil, in the Amazon region, it's a really big part of their diet. It's a good source of carbs, and it's also kind of used as a filler. If you're kind of have some leftovers and you need to throw something in there, they'll just throw some manioc in there, and you got a good meal there.
Yeah, you can eat the not toxic kind of manioc, right? The macaxeira. You can eat those cooked. They're really nice. They get very soft, and they're really nice to eat with a little bit of butter and salt, and that's it. So in some regions of the country, they will eat this for breakfast. So in the northeast, in the coastal area, or you can deep fry them. And these are very, very tasty. So they are great appetizers. For instance, when you go to a bar and they are having some drinks, or especially beer, right? You might ask, instead of French fries, you might ask for fried manioc.
Can you go back a couple pictures to the apple, Ray? Yeah, so this was a sandbar that we had a little festival on. And I don't know if you can see it, but can you point it out with the arrow, Jackie? Yeah, there's a Seja ray, a paratrigon ray, which is a really large freshwater stingray. Another bucket list species on my list. And it was one another couple on the trip had seen, and it was kind of on the opposite side where the boat is, and they're like, let's go back there, and it was still there. So that was a really cool thing to see, all camouflage there.
Yeah. There were a lot of stingrays on this trip. And that was, again, that's like, I've seen them before at the sandbar at Praia de Barca. And I've seen them at other places too, but this year they were so much more concentrated than they have been in the past because of the low water levels. So it was really cool to see them everywhere.
The one thing about this festival, the boat crew literally put up lights. They had a fire going, barbecue. There was a bar. There was a group of people there seining for fish. And then one of the team members on the Brazil side, he's a harpist and a wonderful singer. And we heard some traditional South American style harp music, which was just, I mean, it was phenomenal. It was surreal to have that live music and sit on this beach in the middle of the jungle. You know, it was no mosquitoes. It was great. And that was actually the area where we caught those wide millerai too.
Yeah. Yeah, he's incredibly talented. And I never in a million years would I think that, you know, like sometimes when people are traveling, they'll bring like a ukulele with them or something like that. But, you know, I've never seen anybody haul a harp through the Amazon before. And it was amazing.
I was like, it was kind of like shocked, like, wait, you have a harp and you play, you know? But
not like a little harp. It's like a, you know, a big harp.
It's like taller than me.
Yeah, and he's amazing. He's absolutely amazing. So like, you know, we've been at this for almost an hour and a half, so we'll kind of wrap up soon here. Oh, Fernando brings his harmonica. I forgot about that. That's a more reasonable musical instrument to bring to the Amazon.
A little bit.
But I will say it's definitely a worthwhile trip, even for people who are not into fish. I mean, who's not into fish? If you're watching this YouTube channel, I guarantee you're into fish. But even if you're just into wildlife or conservation or plants, there's something for everyone to see on this trip. And I'll kind of leave it with this: we see dolphins every day on the trip. They're like, you know, throughout the habitat. You see them next to the boat. This is a pink river dolphin, or the boto. And you see them surfacing next to the boat, swimming around, catching the fish that are disoriented by like the wake from the boat. See them every day, and they have these places throughout the Amazon that are sort of government monitored or sanctioned, that people will like do an ecotourism business of like showing tourists the dolphins. So I don't like to promise that to people because we can't always get there. But you will definitely see dolphins all the time.
Yeah, I think one thing that we might comment is every trip is a little bit different, right? We have to go according to nature. So sometimes the river levels allow us to move faster, sometimes slower, sometimes we are able to reach certain places, others not. And so it's always interesting. There's always things to do. There's always great things to see and watch, but nothing is guaranteed. But that has never been a problem. Another thing I would like to say is we have had kids in this trip before, and they have had a great time. So I think they were what, 11, 12 years old,
10 and
and yeah, and so this is also an opportunity for, if you have children, you can bring them with you. If you like fishing, there's also plenty of opportunities to do some peacock bass fishing or some piranha fishing. And the boat crew, they love fishing. So if they find somebody who likes really fishing, they will wake you up at 5 in the morning when everybody is still sleeping and take you out to go fishing because they just want an excuse to go fishing themselves, right? So
it has all the fishing equipment on it, so you don't have to bring rod or reel or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not difficult to bring your own stuff either. So people have done that before. So it's a great trip for you guys who are fish people. It's a great trip for your spouses. It's a great trip for your kids. It's a great trip for your friends. We have had also people in advanced ages being there and being able to do the activities with us. Most of the activities are, it's good if you are fit to get into the canoes, to get out of the canoes, to walk a little bit in the forest. But again, nobody is trying to be Rambo in the jungle here. And snorkeling is a very low impact sport, very accessible for everybody, and very enjoyable. The walks in the forest, they are also, because we're stopping all the time to watch things and to see new stuff, and so there's no big exertion. And it's a very accessible trip. There are stairs in the boat, right? You have to go up and down between the decks. In the cabins, you will have bunk beds, but people who cannot go into the upper bunk bed can stay in the lower one. Every cabin fits 2 people. The lower bunk bed is even large enough or wide enough for 2 people to sleep together if they so wish. And every cabin has a private bathroom, which is tiny but is well appointed. And as Kapil said before, there is air conditioning available. So even though we recommend that everybody take the first day after they come through the airport, have a light first day and keep away from the sun, or take care with the sun and drink a lot of water and like electrolytes. If you need, you will have air conditioning available, plenty of mineral water and safe water to drink, and excellent food.
So I would point that out too. So the water is always included in the trip, and there's an unlimited supply of it. They have a bubbler that takes like the 5-gallon buckets, and they fill the hold with the jugs of water. So everybody, you bring your own like bottle and you refill it as many times as you want. In fact, I bring 2 bottles with me. Because if I lose one or break it or something like that, I've got another. But also, I put the electrolyte powder in one of them, and I think that stuff tastes kind of bad. So I have one bottle that tastes like the stuff and one bottle that's just pure water. But the water is always included. Coffee, tea, juice is all included. They make fresh juice in the morning with breakfast every day, and it's like amazing juice. It's the best juice you've never had juice like this. And the 3 meals a day are included. It's all like, really good food, and it's all like buffet style. So even if there's, if you're a picky eater, there's always something for you to eat. If you're a vegetarian, there's always something for you to eat. If you're a vegan, there's always something for you to eat. But if you do have like specific needs like that, we do ask that you let us know ahead of time, and we can plan a little bit better. But so all that stuff is included. The only thing that's not included is airfare. And various other expenses, like if we do an outing somewhere, like when we went to the acai community, there was a moto taxi ride that went with that. So you had to pay for the moto taxi. And then, it's just little things like that on top. All of this information is on projectpiaba.org, our website, or you can send me an email if you're interested in joining the trip. That's janderson@projectpiaba.org. Or you can email Scott, that's sdowd@projectpiaba.org. We're always available to email and chat, and I work strange hours. So if you live in, say, Australia and you want to chat with somebody in the middle of the night, I'm usually awake. So you don't have to worry about like not being able to schedule a time to meet with us if you're interested in the trip. And also, like on the YouTube channel, there's a lot of videos from the trip. And actually, I've realized that all of the videos that Fernando and I made, all the habitat introduction videos and stuff, I put those on the Facebook page and on the Instagram outlet, but I don't think I uploaded them to YouTube. I've been slacking. So stay tuned for that, and I will put those up. That won't take me very long because I have them already made. And you get to see me and Fernando standing in a creek talking about the fish in the creek. And this is great too. Somebody had asked about the water chemistry parameters. I always put those in the videos, but they're not always like at the beginning of the video. So I can sort of tell when you haven't watched the video if somebody's like, "What's the pH?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's 30 seconds in." So that stuff is almost always included. On the rare chance that I forget, feel free to roast me on it because I like to include it. I went through all the effort to drag the water chemistry kits down to the Amazon. So for me to not include that information is sickening.
It's an amazing time. I think it's probably my best expedition on the Amazon or in the Amazon. The river is just beautiful. It's surreal, just very natural. Tons of stuff to see. I honestly, I'm missing it. I could probably live on the river on a boat. So
yeah, me too.
Do that.
Yeah, we'll have to put a pigeon loft on the boat, and then I can live there.
Don't let those pigeons fly away, Jack.
I know they don't like the water. It's a beautiful place with beautiful people, and it's definitely a worthwhile excursion. And anybody that can't come, we're happy to share it with you on YouTube as well. But we want people to experience it for themselves as well.
And guys, Jackie has always a lot of work trying to fill up the boat, right? And the way this works is that Project Piaba has a few places in the boat that they reserve for volunteers and scientists and people involved in project issues. And the others are for guys like me and you to get to know the project, get to know the region, to get to know this industry. And these extra places that Project Piaba sells, they are practically the only source of funding. So if we don't fill up the boat, then the project has a big financial problem because it is a small NGO, right? It doesn't have special funding from anywhere else. And I understand from what I seen last time around that this last trip we had quite a few vacancies still left, which was a pity. It was in one sense it was good because the group was a little bit more tight-knit, but on the other hand, this makes the project expeditions really endangers them, right? If we don't get the boat full, we might not have the trip, right? And if we don't have the trip, the whole way of how the Project Piaba works with the Brazilian communities gets disrupted. So please help us spread the word that there is a fantastic expedition to the Amazon. It's not difficult to get there. It's a 5-hour flight from Miami to Manaus. You get into the Manaus airport. There will be a bus waiting for you to bring you directly to the boat, where you probably will have some food waiting for you, your cabins, and we'll start right away motoring upriver, right? And from 30 minutes out or 1 hour out from Manaus, you are in the middle of the Amazon jungle, and your whole life changes, right? Because it's fantastic experience. So if you know people who like nature, who like Brazil, who like Amazon, who like fish, who like frogs, snakes, and any type of nature, and who have the cash to pay for this trip, I understand is not a small value, but it's not expensive, right? And have the 2 weeks of time available for that, it's really, really worthwhile, right? And I look forward every year to see if I will be able to go again, right? And as long as I'm able to, I will continue doing this trip. Is the highlight of the year for me.
Me too.
It's a great way to start the year.
Yes. Yes, definitely. So thank you all for joining us today. I hope you've enjoyed the stream. We've never done anything like this before. Maybe we'll do it again if people like it. Again, if you have any questions, comments, etc., feel free to email me. That's janderson@projectpiaba.org. I will drop this, or maybe Fernando will drop it in the chat. Oh, can I just type it? Fernando's typing it. Never mind. janderson@projectpiaba.org. We're always happy to answer questions. And like I said, thank you so much for joining us. And we hope to see you all soon and hear from you.
Thank you.